Hey, Nish here, and today we're taking a look at this Boss ME50 multi-guitar effects pedal. This is an admittedly dated bit of kit. It's from 2007, but I think it still holds up today, and I'm going to be making the case that this is a great option for beginner guitarists who want to dip their toes in the world of guitar effect pedals. Being fairly beginner myself, I was really put off by the cost of guitar pedals. It's like 40 to 50 pounds for a single effect. Then you've got your power supplies, your boards, and before you know it, you're spending a lot of money without even knowing what you want. In contrast, this board cost me just 80 pounds. It has a wide array of effects that I'm gonna go through today. So this is a pretty hefty bit of gear measuring about 40 centimeters by 20 centimeters. You can see that there's a lot of knobs and dials on here. The approach Boss have taken with this board is to make it mimic a traditional guitar pedal setup as closely as possible. This means there's no menus to go through, no screens. All of the settings you need are at your fingertips. You just need to turn the right dial. The board takes a single 1/4" jack input from your guitar. It can then output in stereo to your guitar amp. You can also plug in headphones, or you can do an aux in if you want to play music through here. It's powered by a 9-volt power adapter. You'd probably have to pick one up for about £5 or £6. It can also be battery powered though. 6 AA batteries allegedly last you up to 12 hours. Now I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the kind of effects you've got on here. There's plenty of videos on YouTube if you want to hear every single effect, but I'll just focus on the ones that I'm interested in or are interesting. We start with the tone modify option, which changes the character of the guitar sound a little bit. You can either make a humbucker sound like a single coil or a single coil sound like a humbucker. The only interesting one there's a fat one that boosts the mids. There's also an acoustic simulator, which doesn't sound amazing, but it's okay. Next up, there's a compression, noise reduction, and reverb, the latter of which has 4 different modes within it. None of these can be controlled with pedals. You can put an extra on-off switch to control the compressor, but that's not a natively supported thing on the board. These effects work quite well. They're not horrendously complicated. I quite like the reverb, particularly the mod reverb is quite cool. The first major pedal is the overdrive and distortion. There's 22 variations, so hopefully you'll find one you like, but it ranges from anything from the bluesy crunch type sound to your full-on metal. As I said, you've got analog control there of each effect, and it behaves exactly like a pedal would if you had that specific pedal. So it's really nice to get an idea of which effects you like. The second bank of effects is modulation effects, which modulate the sound. It's got all your major ones, things like chorus, then tremolo, You might think that lumping all these effects into one position, meaning you can only pick one at a time, is a bad thing, but honestly, these kinds of effects, you don't tend to stack them on each other. Maybe you do, maybe I haven't experienced that, but generally, you don't tend to stack them together, so it's convenient actually to have them in here and you can just switch between the one you want. The controls here act differently for each effect. The manual is very useful for figuring out exactly what they're doing, but it's easy enough to play around. The third bank is dedicated to delay effects, and you've got literally any options you'd like for delay, so any duration of delay. I particularly like the dotted quaver note delay. See if you recognize this song. I should say for a lot of the effects you can set the tempo by tapping, so you do this by holding on the pedal for that effect and then tapping that pedal to the tempo you want it. The last major pedal is the expression pedal. The most famous effect for that is going to be that wah pedal. There's also things like up and down an octave, and that pedal also acts as a volume pedal if you're not using one of the effects. The board can be used in 2 broad modes. So firstly, there's just manual mode, where what you see is what you get. Whatever the dials are on, whatever the pedals are on, that's what's going to happen. What you can also do is save a snapshot of all the settings on the board to a patch and then retrieve these later on if you want to go to a particular state. And you can save up to 30 on the device, so it's very handy. Before I move on to the pros and cons of this board, I'd really appreciate if you could subscribe if you haven't already. It's a long way to 1,000 subscribers and your help is much appreciated. So there's a lot I like about this board. Firstly, there's a wide range of effects, and obviously you're not going to use all of them all the time, but it's a wide enough range of effects that you can figure out the ones you like and use them and just experiment and learn. The major pro for me is the usability of this. It's just very approachable for a beginner. I like the idea of what you see is what you get. Like whatever the knob is on, that's what's going on. If you want to tweak this setting, just turn that knob. It makes a lot more sense. If you don't know what you're doing, like me, then going through a menu and having to search through settings gets a little bit daunting. The fact that it mimics a regular pedal board as well means it's an ideal stepping stone, because once you decide what effects you like out of this board, you can be like, okay, well, I'm going to go out now and buy this pedal, and this pedal, and you'll already know roughly how the setup works. Construction-wise, I feel it's really quite good. It feels pretty well made. Obviously, plastic switches aren't going to feel amazing, but I feel like Boss do know what they're doing, being a huge guitar pedal manufacturer. Another bonus is you can power it with batteries, so it could make a nice little busking setup if you want to have a lot of effects at your fingertips. Moving on to sound quality though, this is where things get a little bit iffy maybe, but the thing is, as I understand it, is it depends what kind of amp you have. If you have a really expensive, amazing amp, then a board like this might bring the quality of that amp down. But if you're a beginner and you'd likely have a maybe average little amp, I have a tiny Vox DA5, which is really nothing to write home about. This board, if anything, improves the quality of that amp with the sounds it's producing. So it really depends on the other gear you have. But the thing for sure is that this kind of board maybe isn't for professional gigging use. You know, you should probably know that it's not for that kind of thing, given its price tag. But yeah, that's the only thing to bear in mind. I think if you're a beginner, just learning and exploring with effects, you don't need a 100% professional sounding thing. You just need something that sounds decent, and I think this does. The main complaints I've heard with this board is the overdrive and distortion pedals aren't particularly amazing sounding, and that's understandable. Maybe you need a nice analog pedal to get a really good sound. This is all digital after all, but I think they sound good enough for my purposes anyway. Other than that, my gripes are really small. Like the fact that you can't control the reverb and compression with a pedal could be a bit of an annoyance, but it's really not a big deal. So we can now talk about some other alternatives you might want to consider. The obvious thing I need to talk about is that Boss have of course made more models of the ME series since this one came out in 2007. Their current top of the line is the ME80, which will set you back about £190. That has a lot more effects. They've moved the reverb and compression to their own pedals, and there's some stuff that wasn't in here. For example, there's a full-on preamp, so you don't even have to plug it into a guitar amplifier. You could just plug it into a powered speaker. Could potentially be useful for that busking angle once again. Between the ME50 and ME80, of course, there's a few intermediate devices, the ME60 and 70, as you might guess. Again, what you're going to have is an incremental price increase and incremental extra features as you go up in those, but I think all of them are available used, so I just try and see what you can pick up the best price on. Another option entirely is the Zoom G3XN and G5XN. These are a lot more complicated, there's a lot more menus, there's less knobs, and the idea with those is you maybe set them on a computer, you could set up your signal chain, maybe 6 or 7 different effects, you could get patches from the community as well, other people have made, and generally if you know what you're looking for and you know what kind of signal chain you want, that could be a better option. Because it's more technologically advanced, I imagine you could get a wider variety of sounds out of there, and maybe the quality might be a little bit better, especially compared to the ME50, which is a little bit dated, but I'm not sure how it compares to, say, the ME80. But that is a good option and something else to consider. And with that, I think we can conclude on the Boss ME50. I think this is a great board for beginners because it gives you an opportunity to try out lots of different guitar effects without committing to buying single pedals, which can be quite expensive. This is really easy to use and get to grips with, and I'd highly recommend it. That's my conclusion, really. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any more comments or questions in the comments, and subscribe for more to the point tech content. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.